to find and train and bring workers up to speed in a factory and get them productive and efficient and not making many mistakes. He desperately wanted to reduce turnover. That just made good strategic and economic sense.
You cannot sustain the speed of a line if you have to invest so much of your resources in training people even minimally to do the work. So they have a huge crisis.
With his company's future on the line, Ford would propose an unprecedented strategy, one that would astonish his workforce, confound his competitors, and lead observers to predict the imminent ruin of the Ford Motor Company. In the early days of 1914, Henry Ford convened a top-secret meeting with his senior managers. He spent the first few minutes scribbling numbers on a blackboard. In one column, he wrote $26 million, the company's profits for the previous year. As his colleagues looked on baffled, Ford jotted down another number, $2.34, the daily wage of an assembly line worker. Then he wrote $3 a day, $4.50, and finally, $5 a day. One member of Ford's team vehemently protested, while another fumed silently. Ford stood his ground. A wage of $5 a day, he insisted, would not simply reduce worker turnover, it would increase business.
For most of American history, America was a producer society. The values of production, primarily agricultural production, were the dominant ones. And those values really give way very, very quickly, beginning around the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, into a set of values around consumption. And it's all about, what do I own? How do I get and then spend?
Ford put forward the notion that raising wages would allow workers to be consumers. And whatever you may have lost on the front end, you would get many times over on the back end. And that, he knew, was where the central action was economically in the modern world.
As far as Ford was concerned, the thousands of Model Ts hurtling off his assembly line offered much more than affordable transportation. They promised leisure, abundance, and a shared prosperity. Someday, he imagined, every worker would be able to buy a new Ford car. On January 5th, 1914, Ford went public with his audacious plan. At one stroke, we will reduce the hours of labor from 9 to 8, he told the press, and add to every man's pay a share of the profits of the house. His fellow automakers were appalled by Ford's announcement, certain that higher wages would devastate the industry. One business leader dismissed the idea as the most foolish thing ever attempted in the industrial world. But the real verdict came next morning when 10,000 men showed up at the factory gates, eager for a job at the Ford Motor Company.
Same work, just as boring, just as repetitive, just as hard. But you got people who never dreamed they could make this much money.
Ford's $5 day did more than solve his turnover problem. It transformed him into a national sensation. The story was picked up by papers across the country and around the world. Thousands of newspapers published biographies. The New York Times alone ran 35 stories, and nearly 24 national magazines wrote features.
He has created the Model T, the people's car. He's brought the first modern moving assembly line, and he's revolutionized how workers get paid. people are saying, what's next for this guy?